People, good morning.
Is our mic on?
Yeah.
I don't hear it. Do you hear it?
Not yet.
Okay. Oh, I hear it now.
Good morning.
Oh.
Hello. Hi, Bob. Good to see you. Thanks. Thanks. Good morning. If you don't all start sitting down, I'm sending Hilda up here to get you to sit down. It's true.
Table yesterday?
Okay, I don't like if everybody sees yourselves on that screen.
I don't know who she is. I just waved at her. I don't know who she is.
I do.
There's our photographer.
Yay! I hope I don't look bad. Good morning. You're doing a very good job of sitting down, some of you, most of you.
There's Siraj.
You ready?
Come on. All right.
You want to launch into this?
Huh?
You ready to launch into this?
I am.
Oh my God.
That works.
Thanks. Thanks. We're about to get started, so thank you.
So, welcome everyone. I would like to introduce you to my lovely dapper co-chair, Tom Palucci, Senior Principal of HOK.
And I would like to introduce my beautiful co-chair, Suzette Rhodes of Herman Miller. So let's get this started. The IIDA Leaders Breakfast series was launched here in New York in 1989 with the goal of introducing IIDA to the business world as a leading industry association, which it is, and to establish a forum where IIDA members could see, hear, and meet their peers in the corporate and institutional sectors. This year's breakfast has sold out with a record attendance of over 700 people.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you all making this such a success. But before we begin, I'd like to recognize some important organizations and people for making this event possible. First, we'd like to acknowledge the national benefactors of the Leaders Breakfast program, Herman Miller and Interior Design. We'd also like to thank Herman Miller for providing the furniture for the stage, and to WB Wood for donating their services for pickup and delivery. Thank you very much.
So this event could not be possible without the hard work from our committee, so I'd like to acknowledge them right now.
Tina Brennan, Interior Design.
Samantha McCormack, TPG.
The awesome Alan Gooden, Kellen Company.
Lori Hutner, WB Wood.
Katie Battaglia, Nemo Tile.
Ms. Kelly Powell, Hudson's Bay Company.
Curry Gardner, HLW.
The awesome Hilda Longinati, Herman Miller.
And Rebecca Doris Steiger, Gensler. Can you all stand so you can be recognized, please, because you people are awesome. Thank you. So, for the breakfast, we always like to have a theme, and this year's theme for the Leaders Breakfast is all about design. The committee wanted a real focus on design and on New York. We are so fortunate to live and work in a city that loves design. You see it in fashion, in product design, in architecture, and of course, interior design. And we have venerable institutions that support and promote design to our community and to the world.
So, We hope you'll be inspired today by our wonderful keynote speaker, Paola Antonelli. She is the Senior Curator of the Department of Architecture and Design, as well as the Director of R&D at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Now, to commemorate Paola's speaking, we have a bit of a surprise. So for our annual partners at your tables, please pick up your plate. If there is a note there for one person, you've been the lucky winner of a MOMA membership for the year. So, for your annual partnership, thank you very much. This is a perk for you guys.
Oh my God, it's a big deal. It's awesome.
All right. So, by the way, if you have that little paper, please go to the desk out front at the end and pick up your certificate. So, congratulations to the winners. So, but before we get to Paola, that works. Okay. But before we get to Paola, we'd like to bring up our president of Iida New York, Rebecca Dorsteiger, for the president's report.
Wow. Good morning. This is amazing. We are totally sold out, 700 people. This is great. I can't believe that it's May, and I'm almost finished with my year as chapter president. It's been a great experience for me, both professionally and personally. I'd like to thank my friends and colleagues on the board of directors for trusting me to hold this position and lead the New York chapter. I'd also like to thank our annual partners, because we would not be able to provide the quantity and quality of events that we do without their support. So thank you to our diamond partner, Lane Office, DIRT, our platinum partner, Hayworth, our gold partners, the HNI companies, All Steel, HBF, and Gunlock, Hansgrohe, Herman Miller, Knoll, Lutron, Meadows Office Interiors, and Steelcase Coalesce and Design Techs. And thank you to all 21 of our silver partners. Best partnership year ever. Thank you all. So I'm super excited to talk about our design firm partners. This year we have 7 firms as design firm partners. So this is a new level of sponsorship that we created specifically for firms providing professional design services in New York State. In addition to tickets to our signature events and a table at the breakfast this morning, design firms get 5 tickets for their employees or for their clients to attend all of our forums, all of our educational events. And we had over 30 last year. And that provides exposure to ideas in multiple disciplines, and it provides CEUs to support professional compliance. And thank you to those who have purchased a table for this morning's event. So I'm going to skip the newsreel. You've all seen it before, and I'm going to launch right into the president's report. As chapter president, I get the honor of bragging about our chapter and how we have a huge impact on the design community. So please indulge me for a few minutes. I will try to keep it short and sweet, or I'll get pulled off the stage. So if you're interested in pursuing an NCIDQ certificate, which I highly recommend, I'd like to remind you about our study group. I'm proud to mention that the pass rate for the participants of our study group is 75%. Huge. And it's amazing when you compare it to the 57% national pass rate as reported by the Council for Interior Design Qualification. We have made it a priority to shed light on the power of all things IIDA. But we're only as powerful as the noise that we make and the people who rally behind our efforts. Over the past year, we've seen our LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook followers increase by an average of 20%. And we've been in the press 82 times in 2014 and 33 times already this year. Our 7th annual Sustainable Quilt Auction wrapped up 9 months of quilting bees. I know many of you participated, thank you, where 9 teams logged over 1,600 hours creating quilts made of discarded and discontinued fabric from the contract design industry. And the result was beautiful and bold quilts with themes like Doctor Who, Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and marriage equality. Last year, we joined Be Original Americas, a nonprofit organization committed to promoting the value of genuine design and eliminating counterfeit practices in the design industry. And in support of the moral, environmental, and economic value of genuine design, proceeds from the quilt auction were donated to Be Original Americas. We just wrapped up our 17th annual Pioneering Design Lecture Series this week. In March, Michaela O'Connor Abrams, President and CEO of Dwell Media, discussed how she developed a multifaceted company in digital media, consumer products, and prefabricated homes. On Monday, Dr. Valerie Hillings, curator and manager of curatorial affairs at the Guggenheim, spoke about her experience curating exhibitions at museums in New York, Bilbao, Las Vegas, and the Future Museum in Abu Dhabi. Inspired by the world of Alice in Wonderland, the 12th annual Color Invasion drew a record-breaking 1,200 attendees down the rabbit hole. The mystical environment, coupled with enchanting AV and entertainment, raised much-needed funds for our chapter activities for students and donations to the pajama program. Here's a teaser for Color Invasion 2015. Everybody okay out there? I was a little bit worried. No seizures? Okay. So pencil that in for October. Color Invasion's going to be amazing again. So my goal as chapter president was to focus on providing mentorship at all levels. A holistic approach to professional development and mentorship that would help strengthen the value of our chapter and what we bring to the New York design community. Over the past 20 years, our chapter has developed many successful programs for students. Speed Mentoring and Design This provide opportunities for targeted student mentorship by working professionals. Our first work sample review in April helps students understand how to curate their best work to send to design firms when applying for jobs. And we awarded almost $20,000 to design students from our accredited New York design schools for the Student Design Awards. Our chapter's interaction with the design schools and their deans has allowed us to get a pulse on the level of design coming out of our local schools and have a formative impact on our future colleagues. Moving along the professional path, our iConnect program focuses on emerging designers with up to 7 years of experience. The iConnect networking and professional development events have been very successful in engaging our future leaders. And to further the mission of mentorship at all levels, I wanted to create a program for what I would call established designers with 8 to 15 years of experience to help them continue to develop as professionals and as leaders within their firms and in the community. Our Facilities Forum has taken on this mission, and they will tackle the idea of mentoring and its evolution by featuring 3 visionaries who will share their views on fostering creativity, networking, and challenging the status quo, leading to company productivity and professional and personal growth. So that's IIDA New York in a nutshell. Short and sweet, just like I promised. And here are Tom and Suzette, who will continue with this morning's program. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. So, it was awesome. Okay. So, as all of you should know, last year marked the 25th anniversary of the Leaders' Breakfast. And the committee this year wanted to try something new and create maybe a new tradition to celebrate that anniversary moving forward. So we're going to try this out. We decided we'd make it a surprise as to who would be the honoree at Leaders' Breakfast. So we're doing this also as a bit of a ploy to ensure that you all show up every year, because you just don't know. One of you out there could be an honoree. So we're going to try this. We're going to see if it's going to work. You never know.
So, drum roll. This year, we would like to honor Hazel Siegel and Randy Fahey of Gensler. Don't worry, your turn could be next. We have a lovely video for you guys to watch and attribute
Even
to
if
these
it's
two
80
wonderful
degrees
people.
out, that's what she's wearing.
She's got a lot of style and personality.
Cookies, notebooks, pens. So this is what I mean about power of personality. She doesn't just tell them about how to do textile design and teach them things, but in everything she does, she's disciplined, she's organized, and she puts her 100% into it.
I'm Ellie Cunningham. I work at HOK currently, and I met Hazel when I was a member of the IIDA Knowledge Forum a few years ago when I was a student at Pratt.
I'm Anita Cooney, and as of April 1st, I officially became the Dean of Design at Pratt.
I'm Catherine Plunkett. I am an interior designer at Gensler. And I first met Hazel when I was a grad student at Pratt.
She was kind of my introduction to how the industry worked and what it was about outside of the office, outside of the studio, and what it meant to give back to the people in the community.
She is someone who never really stops.
She's kind of always a mentor to students and to people who are learning about how the industry works.
She's just so dedicated. She just gives back so much.
There's not a person, it doesn't matter what their other interests are, that it's rare that they don't walk away feeling changed by that course and thinking she's one of the best experiences they had.
And we were walking out the door, and right as we were walking out the door, the head of the showroom noticed who was walking out the door, not me, Hazel, and screamed her name and came running over to us and gave her a big hug and just wanted to know what she wanted and why he was so lucky to have her in the showroom.
You don't always meet people that are as giving of their time as she is, so it's memorable.
They understand that it's a full-on experience, and by watching her, so, and they can't help but be moved by that, so.
I really think that he's had a major influence in helping people break out of out of a norm, out of what they think is the standard.
He's frank, he's honest, he just sort of tells it how it is and tells you what's going on, and he doesn't sugarcoat anything.
And when you think of Randy, I think of his smile, I think of his laugh, and I think of his warmth. He's this welcoming person who's kind to everybody.
My name is Rebecca Doris Steiger, and I am an interior designer at Gensler in New York, and I am also the president of the IIDA New York chapter. I met Randy in 2005 when I returned home to New York and joined Gensler.
My name is Kat Lindsay. I'm the owner of Lindsay Newman, And I've known Randy Fahey, famously known as Charles Randolph Fahey, since 1986. And we worked together at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. He's a font of information. He's just wonderful.
My name's Cynthia Meerbach. I'm with Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, and we've worked together in the interior design department off and on for more years than I can count.
I mean, the man knows everything. He is so smart and he's so knowledgeable. It's just like he's a sage before his time.
Just the pride that he took in his work, pointing out all the little architectural details, talking about how things became what they were, and
I found him to be a great mentor, personally and professionally.
Seriously, you can ask him like, okay, what about this chair? Do you know about this chair? He's like, oh yeah, that was built in 1952. It's designed by blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I did learn last week that he was Andy Warhol's gardener.
shared experiences, shared work, they all contribute to what we become. And I'm very happy to say that Randy has been in my life. So.
And then all of a sudden we hear, Cat Lindsay! And it's Randy.
Well, as with all live events, you just don't know what's going to happen. So as much as we wanted to make this a surprise, and if it's a surprise, that means you don't know. Unfortunately, neither Hazel nor Randy could be here tonight. And that's okay.
That's okay.
So, in lieu of having our esteemed honorees, we have two lovely individuals that are here to accept awards on behalf of Hazel and Randy. So for Hazel, I'd like to welcome Rebecca Doris Steiger, and for Randy, I'd like to welcome Becky Button, both of Gensler.
And
To present the awards, I'd like to invite Abigail French of Herman Miller to the stage. Abigail? Where's Becky? Oh, there's Kim. Oh, thank God. God, that would have been amazing.
Good morning. As you may know, Herman Miller has historically given the IIDA Leaders Breakfast honoree in each city an original Eames plywood splint as a symbol of design leadership. As there are a limited number of original splints, the time has come to place the remaining splints in the Herman Miller Design Archives. Moving forward, Herman Miller would like to congratulate you and award you a special edition of an icon of modern design. These stools have become the basis for the new IIDA Leaders Breakfast honoree gift. Prior to the design of the Time Life building, the story began with another collaboration between George Nelson, the Eameses, Henry Luce of Time Life. George Nelson had asked Charles and Ray Eames to produce the film Glimpses of the USA for the American National Exhibit in Moscow. The Eameses approached Henry Luce to access the Time Life's photo archives for the film. Luce agreed and asked the Eameses to return a favor one day. I feel like I'm reading a storybook. So then, Luce's return call came to the Eames. It came only 1 year later when he commissioned them to design the executive lobbies and furniture for his new building in Manhattan. Then they skipped through the woods, and this included the Eames Executive Group, popularly known as the Time Life Chairs, and Ray Eames also designed a series of walnut stools to accompany the chairs and serve as low seats and tables. Herman Miller has produced these since 1960. To distinguish your stool from the walnut ones, in collaboration with the Eames office, We have made yours in a sustainable, solid ash with a translucent aniline red stain, a favorite color of the Eames. In addition to your special edition of the stool, it's addition and then addition, right, two different. We would like to present you with a booklet on the history of the stool and a framed print of the stool from the Herman Miller Design Archives. We truly hope you accept our thanks for your contribution to the world of design and that you truly live happily ever after.
So on behalf of Hazel, I would like to thank you, Abigail, and Herman Miller for this lovely stool. I've always wanted one of these stools. She'll never know. I'll try to get it to her as quickly as I can. So thank you for that, and I know Hazel would be thrilled and honored and beside herself about this recognition. So thank you all.
And on behalf of Randy, I'm sure he would be wearing something very colorful today. I'm wearing black, but I'm sure he will be very honored to receive this. He was a mentor to me and a colleague and a friend, so I think it's a great award for him. So, do we get to take it with us? No.
So if nobody says anything, we can keep the stool, so shh. Okay. So thank you, Abigail, and thank you for everybody. And really, my heartfelt congratulations to both Hazel and Randy. We do so appreciate all the work that you've done in your community and for our profession. And now, I'd like to welcome Cheryl Durst, Executive Vice President and CEO of IIDA, to the stage. Thank you.
It is like surfing. Good morning, everyone. Wow. Perhaps we'll just try that again. Good morning, everyone. Right. So much better. Thank you. I want to thank Tom and Suzette and Rebecca and the chapter for asking me to join you this morning. And I have the honor of introducing your keynote speaker. And so those of you who know me know that, I just can't do the regular cheese introduction that you pull off the internets. So I've got a little something special I want to do. And before I do that, I also want to acknowledge this year's International President of IIDA, Julio Braga from New York. Julio, somewhere way in the back. And the New York chapter also has another member of this chapter who's on the international board, Enrique Reyes, who's sort of part of the New York chapter because he's got kids who live here. Enrique's back there in the back, seriously in the cheap seats. Not so cheap seats. Those are the cheap seats up there. And two international past presidents call this chapter home, Peter Conant and John Mack. All back there. So, given the lives that we all lead and what we all do between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., because design is definitely not an 8-hour job, context is really crucially important. So I want to set just a little bit of context for you. So on May 14th, in 1607, the first English settlement was established at Jamestown. And on this date, in 1796, the first smallpox vaccine was given. In 1804, Lewis and Clark left St. Louis and started their expedition west. 100 years later, in 1904, and a little bit early, but it was May 14th in 1904, the first Olympic Games to be held in the United States were held in St. Louis. In 1908, the first passenger aircraft took off. In 1942, the first women in the military were approved as WACs in the Army, not wackadoodles, WACs. In 1961, the first bus of Freedom Riders crossed the state line in Alabama, and then that bus was bombed and burned within 30 minutes of crossing the state line of Alabama. In 1973, the Supreme Court approved equal rights for women in the military. Also in 1973, Skylab, the first manned space station, off it went on May 14th. In 1983, She Blinded Me with Science was on the top charts. Very seminal moment in music history. Also, in 1983, the Department of Health and Human Services made its debut. In 1989, both Moonlighting and Family Ties went off the air. 1998, on May 14th, we saw the very last episode of Seinfeld. Right? Aw, somebody said. In 2012, scientists at Stanford created the first usable bionic eye that is now being used to treat patients who've lost eyesight due to macular degeneration. And in 2013, on May 14th, Brazil became the 15th country to legalize same-sex marriage. Just so that you know, May 14th is National Chicken Dance Day. There will be a chicken dance workshop held immediately following this breakfast. And tomorrow is National Chocolate Chip Day, so you need to know that, right? And celebrating birthdays today. Now, this is an interesting collection of folks. George Lucas, Robert Zemeckis, Mark Zuckerberg, David Byrne, and Cate Blanchett. So what does all that matter? What do those data points mean? In the context of time, moments matter. In the context of moments, experiences matter. And in the context of experiences, it's where design lives. And our speaker this morning is on a mission to introduce and explain design in all of its context to the world. She celebrates the presence of design in every part of life. And talking about design in every part of life is a little bit like talking about air. We need air and water and occasionally sex to live. Don't act like I'm lying when I say occasionally. And we need design to live as well. Paola Antonelli has been described as brilliant. She's been described as provocative, and she's been described as a troublemaker. She's far-seeing, and she's thoughtful, and at some point in her life, she wanted to be an astronaut. She designed MoMA's very first website and had to beg, borrow, and possibly steal from petty cash $300 to make that happen. And it's because no one understood what a website was, and people were afraid of owning it. Does it belong to communications? Does it belong to publications? Does it belong to management? Again, this was 1995. And so getting your head wrapped around what a website could do for brand and entity and information was a tough thing. So that $300, she used some of that to pay for taxis and to take a class at SVA in a thing called HTML. Her expansive and elastic mind has brought new vigor to the concept of and the institution that we know as a museum. What you're going to hear this morning will help expand the definition of what we know as design. And I think alliteration is a pretty amazing thing, and I am happy to introduce the very elegant, the very eloquent, the very erudite, the exquisite, and most excellent Paola Antonelli.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Cheryl, for this great introduction. And thank you, Suzette. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you all from IIDA for inviting me this morning. I have a little habit with my husband, wherever I am, I text him a picture of the room where I'm about to talk, and I text him a picture of the audience. And so I did it this morning, and he answered, "Oh, mine, they're so much better dressed than the people at South by Southwest." And I'm like, no kidding. No kidding. And indeed, you know, New York is a place that loves design, and what's best is that it loves design in all of its forms, and you in particular, because you deal with the ground level, literally, of New York's interface with the world, the retail, the interiors, the entrances, the lead into New York life. You're particularly versed in the amazing moment that we're in design, a moment of fluidity, of ambiguity, of ambivalence, in gender, in space, between digital and physical. It's an extremely exciting moment, and that's why I'm happy to have this mission to try and communicate it to the world, and you know best. So I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the new frontiers of design today. I have been using this slide forever, and you don't have to copy it or learn it or read it in detail. It's just one of the best slides ever, and it's by Tony Dunn and Fiona Raby, my colleagues from London that were at the Royal College of Art. It shows how design was before and how it is now. You know, it shows the fact that we went for a form of design that was about problem solving to a form of design that is about problem finding. So many of us do not only solve problems for our clients, but sometimes also give hints as to something that's about to happen. We use our job and our work as Trojan horse into a new life. Or sometimes, you know, in the past, it used to be design about making us buy, and today, very often, it's about making us think. And one of my favorite lines is going from consumer, working for consumers, to working for citizens. There are so many different nuances that show that design is in flux, and that we have a lot of power to build the future in a way that is different, more thoughtful, and more responsible than the past. And of course, we're never going to forget the elegance that makes us be real human beings, because I do believe that beauty and elegance are a form of respect for others. So I work in a museum of art where somehow people don't understand that design is so much more important than art. But it's something that we will discuss later. I do believe that. And you know, together with my team, we try to do as much as possible to show this kind of diversity in design by showing interfaces, showing typefaces, showing kind of design that is a mixture of digital and handmade, and also sometimes not showing things in galleries at all, but rather having programs online, like the Design and Violence program that we just ended last week with a post about the death penalty. So design is so multiverse that can lead us also to talk about such important topics as female genital mutilation, euthanasia, the death penalty, you will wonder why. Well, objects, interiors, spaces, and architecture are poignant concepts that are filled with meaning for human beings. And we try as much as possible to make that understood by pointing out sometimes also objects that people don't think of as design very often. What you see here, this little rabbit, is a stand-in for the icons by Susan Kare that we just acquired into the collection. Susan Kare designed the first icons for the Macintosh, the Apple computers in the 1980s, so she's responsible for the smiley Macintosh, for the bomb, you know, the cherry bomb that was scaring us all. So these are also forms of design, and people should find out that design is not only cute chairs and fast cars, but it's also origami, it's also 3D printing, thoughtful 3D printing, and it's always, as much as possible, critical. So what I want to kind of bounce with you back and forth is what you already know. Sometimes you do interiors that seem about celebrating a client, seem about celebrating a certain atmosphere, but you know deep inside that everything you do is critical and is a way to think of how society will be in the future. Some designers take it more literally. I was telling you about Dunn and Raby and the fact that they think of design as problem finding and not problem solving. This is a really interesting project that they did a few years ago, thinking about the future. If we keep on going this way, in a few decades, we might not be able to have enough food for the whole world to eat. So you know what? We might have to revert to eating things we haven't eaten for centuries, like seaweed and roots and leaves of trees, but our stomachs have become so delicate that we might have to wear these kind of outsourced gastrointestinal systems on our bodies and just like walk around and have them eat and pre-digest for us. These are almost scenarios that are borderline art, but they are design in that they are meant to be, they declare themselves as being for the future of mankind and a lot of food for thought, if I may use that pun. Another example of very critical design is this interface by a group from Columbia University that shows blocks in inner cities in the United States where the government spends more than $1 million a year to keep some of the inhabitants either in prison or in halfway houses. So in a way, it's about non-reintegration in society. It's about a form of social entropy that is also buttressed by financial waste. You might read that there's more than 300 of these blocks in Brooklyn alone and think it's outrageous, but if you just read it, you'll forget it in 20 minutes. If you see it like this, red over black, it's going to stay with you almost tattooed in your mind. So that's the power of design, to make the invisible visible and memorable in some cases. So it really has this critical and almost activist power, even when it's apparently benign. I mean, in some cases, it's not that benign. It's really about activism. That funny red thing over there is a vest to be worn by protesters all over the world, and it's padded, so it protects protesters from the batons of the police, of course. But then it also, you know, this is an old one. It's from the beginning of 2000, of the new millennium, and he was thinking that you would have also a camera mounted over your head. Now the police cameras have become kind of discussed and standard, but at that time it was not that way. It was in order to film the action and make sure everything was documented. But the best feature was a loudspeaker over the heart that would amplify the heartbeat to remind the police they were dealing with a human being, you know, so like the flower of the 1960s. But also, you can imagine hundreds of people wearing this vest and this collective heartbeat that becomes threatening. So the threat of real humanity in front of abuse and injustice. So it's very activist, as is the idea of giving people, homeless people, shelters that are not only protective but also very colorful. You can use it in September. You know, very colorful, so as to make, once again, the invisible homelessness visible and in the face of everybody. So this kind of like subtle activism, always elegant, comes into play all the time. I love this work by Sofia Oliveira de Barata. I love how our society has come to see people with disabilities as people that are differently able. That's how we call them in Italy. I find it beautiful, with so many different things that are not really good in Italy. That's really good. Differently able.
And Sophie de Oliveira Barata makes these artificial limbs that are real sculptures. So can you be in your face more than this? My arm, yeah, I might not have an arm like you, but look at what I can wear that you can't. You know? So I really like that kind of empowerment. And I was telling you before about design and violence and about female genital mutilation. Look at this amazing poster for Amnesty International. In Design and Violence, we had Angélique Kidjo, the famous African singer, comment on this poster, and she said something beautiful. She said, if you really want to change things, sometimes you don't want to punch people who are wrong in the face. You want to get to them from the side. So you don't want to have a real image of a female genital mutilation, but rather something like this that is at the same time elegant and so poignant and powerful. So this is the activism that we can strive for as designers. It's an activism that is always seeking communication. We don't want to break the communication. We want to continue it, and we want to subvert as much as possible. Sometimes the communication is kind of funny. You know, this is another designer that looks to the future. Many designers are very concerned about food in the future, and rightly so. So his way to manifest the invisible is to say, if we keep on going like this, in the future we might have to shrink to less than half our stature and our dimensions in order to deal with our waste if it continues this way. So he shows that we should go back to that we're going to be smaller than chickens. So once again, it's a way to explain and communicate. But what I like particularly are the forms of design that mix the most contemporary technologies with the oldest rituals. What you're seeing here, two examples of communication with God. On the left-hand side is communication with Catholic God, and on the right-hand side is instead Muslim, so communication with Allah. Both objects are about using technology. On the left-hand side, it's a ticker tape that feeds news from the BBC website into a monastery, a cloistered monastery in northern England, and the nuns really use it to, they say, keep their prayers pertinent. And instead, on the right-hand side is a Muslim prayer mat designed by a Turkish designer that has an underlay of an electroluminescent underlay that lights up thanks to a compass module when the carpet is put in the direction of Mecca. Now, we all know where Mecca is. It's not a matter of real information. It's a gesture, technology kowtowing to ritual. And I find it really beautiful, and there are so many designers that are working in this direction. When it comes to communicating the invisible, sometimes designers also help us understand things that are impossible to understand. How many of you were really able to explain to your children, if you had them, what the credit, the CDO, the collateral debt obligation that led the world on the brink of collapse in 2008, actually not on the brink, into collapse in 2008 were? I mean, I don't have children, but for my friends and my parents, I use the meatloaf as an example. I mean, it was just like so difficult. Where this is a wonderful visualization of the crisis of credit that happened in 2008. And on the left-hand side is a visualization of the denial of service attacks that happen all the time in the world that are one of the basic forms of digital warfare. So once again, designers help people understand what's going on, and sometimes designers help people also understand via making. This beautiful word, thinkering, was coined by Richard Seeley Brown, who was the head of Xerox PARC in the 1980s, this great think tank in California. Thinkering is thinking with your hands, is understanding through making. And it's so much at the basis of contemporary maker culture. I know that you had Mick Eberling as a speaker a few years ago, and Mick did a documentary about this amazing project that's called the iWriter Project, in which a group of programmers and artists and engineers that were all around the I-Beam Foundation here in New York got together to help this graffiti artist in LA that is now completely paralyzed because of Lou Gehrig disease. And using a very simple pair of stupid glasses, a computer camera, and open source software enabled this graffiti artist, Tempt1, to tag a building in downtown Los Angeles from his hospital bed. It's an amazing project that shows not only the power of technology, but first and foremost, the power of open source. It's one way to explain why open source is important. This might have been done for Tempt1, but this software is online for everybody to use. And until a few years ago, People that had Lou Gehrig's disease or other debilitating, paralyzing diseases had to use, I don't know how many of you saw the theory of everything, when at the beginning he has to use the table with all the different letters and try to stop, write by signaling every letter. They had to do that before, and because any kind of tool that was electronic and automated cost at least $10,000. Now it's $65. So it really is amazing what open source and tinkering can do. And it doesn't have to be only digital. There's so much happening right now in the physical world that's connected to the digital, various forms of making, of 3D printing. And once again, there are some designers that are taking the opportunity to connect the old and the new. And I'm showing you up there, I don't know if you've ever seen it before, it's quite beautiful, the works of Marcus Kaiser. He does 3D printing, and 3D printing is about taking a material and fusing it and sintering it using light. But instead of using resin and laser, he uses the sand of the Sahara Desert and the beams of the sun magnified the way we used to when we wanted to burn leaves as children. And by doing so, he creates that vessel. I don't have the laser beam. Anyway, the vessel that you see in the small line, which is a vessel that looks ancient because it looks like a glassified ceramic glass piece. But at the same time, it's completely contemporary because it carries the scars, the regular scars of 3D printing. So beautiful and so poignant. And then there's this vase made by 40,000 bees that is molded and then really made by the bees, just let be on it, and instead forms of 3D printing that recycle robots from the car industry. So it really is so active and not necessarily always digital. This is the work that I really love by Martino Gamper that did 100 chairs in 100 days, picking up all the debris and the trash from the streets of London. It was an exercise in tinkering that also enabled so many designers to really turn the page and make again. Today there's this wonderful coming together of crafts and technology, and sometimes radical crafts is what I call, are at the center of it all. The idea of organic has also changed. We've been trying to imitate nature for millennia in different ways, but paradoxically, the computer has led us as close as possible to it. And one of the greatest examples of this is in the work of Neri Oxman. Neri did many wonderful things, but this silk pavilion from last year is a beautiful example of high-tech digital, which is the attempt to study how silkworms move, and instead organic. Silkworms are the ones that finally build this particular pavilion. What Neri did with her team at the MIT Media Lab is she studied in detail, using the computer and 3D scanning, how silkworms move, and then she set the conditions for the silkworms to do this particular object. I'm going to show you now the video, which is quite amazing. So that was installed in the atrium. Yeah, it's quite beautiful. It was installed in the atrium of the Media Lab, and you see what I'm talking about. It's amazing, and every time I see those silkworms, I want to hug them, because it's like they become the construction workers, you know what I'm saying? So it's, you've seen examples here of ancient and new. You've seen examples of old rights and new technology. In this case, it's organic, it's nature and the computer coming together to build. So it really is also the construction that is done together. It's really what the future is about, this in-betweenness that really signifies where we're at. And it's funny because you've seen seaweed, you've seen silkworms. The other hero of today's technology is the mushroom, and particularly the mushroom mycelium, which is the substance that is secreted by mushrooms to attach themselves to trunks of trees. There's a company in Troy here in New York that comes out of Rensselaer Polytechnic that is developing, it's called Ecovative, is developing this material that is a substitute to polystyrene for insulation, that is basically corn stalks recycled and then grown and solidified together by mushroom mycelium. The construction at MOMA PS1 last year, the Young Architects program, was all made of bricks that way. But you know, Ecovative and David Benjamin, the architect, are not the only one. There's David Ross in California. There's this guy, Maurizio Montalti in the Netherlands, that actually makes shrouds of mycelium that are like burial shrouds, because they're a way to actually disintegrate corpses and make them flow into the earth. There's a lot that goes into all this, and that is a way to actually include nature into the making. And paradoxically, it's also a very political act. I mean, I grew up in Europe where everything that is beyond the family nucleus is politics. So I know that it's kind of like rude to talk politics in the United States, especially at dinner, but for us, it's like you talk about football and you talk about politics, and it becomes very heated and everybody talks on top of each other. So it's kind of a very comfortable condition to think of politics. And the work that some of these people are doing with seaweed, with mushroom, you name what, it becomes political. Especially when it's the work of Cecil Tolas that you see on the right-hand side, a perfume scent artist and activist, and Christina Agapakis, another great scientist. What you're looking at here is human cheese. It's made with some parts of human milk, bacteria from armpits, and it's disgusting, and I'm sure I'm like ruining your breakfast, but that's actually the intended provocation. It's for people to think of what would happen if we had to revert to this because of everything that we're doing right now. So I like the fact that so many designers and scientists work together, are really pushing in front of us the idea of what if, the question what if. This is a very political act too. It's a website. I was discussing it just yesterday with John Maida, the designer, because we were reminiscing. This is from 2004. It's another student from the Media Lab, and it's called They Rule. And it was the first time that politicians and corporate boards in the United States were led to be completely freaking out because of the power of the internet. It was a visualization of the connections and collusions, not illegal collusions, but just kind of contaminations between different boards in the United States and political entities in Washington. And you know, it's an old story. I mean, corporate boards tend to hire each other, you know, because they like to be in their comfort zone. But this was the first time where big companies were actually kind of outed and shown in their intermingling. So it was really quite a powerful political act. The work of architects, too, sometimes flows into the digital, and I'm sure that many of you do the same. You know, you're absolutely perfect to work in the digital realm because it's so spatial. It's so much about circulation and about experiences. And Diller Scofidio Renfro was not part of the team yet at that time. Diller Scofidio worked with all these visualization designers once on this beautiful exhibition that happened in Paris at the Fondation Cartier that was all about migrations. And it was a series of visualizations of how great movements of people in the second half of the 20th century, because of either natural or man-made disasters, changed the destinies of the world, not only ethnically, but also financially. There's one of the visualizations that shows remittances, that shows money that's sent home by people that have immigrated in so-called developed countries. I always hate that developed countries. But the character of visionary of so much design and so much of the work that you do is truly important. A few years ago, we acquired, in 2011 when it came out, we acquired Bjork's Biophilia app, because apps are an amazing way to show the coming together of different worlds. And Biophilia in particular was really about science, about music, it was about graphics, and it was also about interactivity. I don't know if you've ever played with it, but you make your own music. In a way, Bjork makes the matrix and the basic platform for you to invent your own music. And that's what so many designers are doing today with the idea of 3D printing and customization. So I like to use that almost as a metaphor. Once again, the vision sometimes is borderline science fiction. Another seaweed project. This is Michiko Nita and Michael Burton that think of a future once again where we will have to be fed by algae. You know, it's really kind of an obsession. But also the vision is about making. You see here some work of architects that work very closely with scientists that are trying, like Neri Oxman, to find a new way to not build top-down, but rather grow bottom-up buildings. That's a very organic attitude. It's about trying not to impose our will onto the world and also onto other people, but rather to try and guide the growth and to try and guide the way objects, buildings, and even cities grow themselves. It's an attitude that you will find in so many different scales, at so many different scales of design and in so many different platforms. Also, in this case, it's a beautiful example of a different way of making. You can see this in the galleries at MOMA if you go. It's a new way of building 3D printed objects. As you probably know, 3D printed objects cost more the bigger the 3D printer you need. And Kinematics Nervous System, this company up in Cambridge, has found a way to build things folded in a smaller 3D printing. So you see there that dress, which is already a feat on its own because there's software that enables you to really customize it onto your body, can be printed in this much space, therefore making it so much smaller. Think of how mind-boggling it is to be able to have an algorithm that calculates what an object is like once it's folded. What I am amazed is by how poetic and how absolutely far-reaching algorithms have become and how close the collaboration is between scientists, mathematicians, and designers. I'm sure you've encountered it already in your world, but the bringing together the human side of what we do and the humane side of what we do and the digital side is a great effort. Humane also means being able to find real solutions for the world. So we go back to problem solving and the attempts by many designers. You probably already know this work by Masoud Hassani. He is a young Afghani designer that has studied in the Netherlands and that has done his thesis on an experience from his childhood. He grew up in northern Afghanistan in a place that was riddled by minefields, and very often playing with his friends, he would make these like rolling toys that would be wind powered, and they would end up in minefields and they couldn't go and retrieve them. So when he grew up, after having been smuggled by his mom towards Europe and studying design, he decided to make this wind-powered, dandelion-like, gorgeous bamboo and plastic object that is meant to be pushed onto minefields to make mines explode. You know, the problem with demining is that it costs about $2 to put down a mine and about $1,000 to retrieve it because of how complicated the technology is. And this would be, because bamboo is so abundant all over the world, this would be a way to kind of be able to have this object all over the world for cheap. So many people are thinking about that, and I like the fact that he dug into his own childhood to think about it. Also, this work by two designers in California is very sensitive because it is about going into communities that need to be uplifted and helping them do, design, make things for themselves. In this particular case, it's a community in Southern Carolina, one of the counties, the poorest counties in the United States, and Project H, this particular group, went into this community, spent a whole year with them, and helped them make a new farm stand and a new type of chicken coop that they could actually also sell to counties around them. You know, it's very nice because we're used to thinking that designers and architects especially are so arrogant and so much about really imposing their own visions, but that's changed tremendously. And that has become much more about understanding the context. In some cases, the context and the understanding can be really strange. I'm sure you all know the work of Temple Grandin. I'm sure she doesn't consider herself a designer, but she's the one that redesigned the slaughterhouse, the experience for cows, because cows used to be able to see that they were going towards being slaughtered, and instead, Temple Grandin, being autistic and having a strange idea, or her own idea about comfort, was able to actually redesign this whole experience so that the cow does not get scared. And you might say, does that make any sense? Why do we make the cow go through it anyway? I find these questions that sometimes design can bring up really provocative, and that's why in the Design and Violence website, we ask the question at the end, can we redesign a violent act to be more humane? And we gathered more than 120 comments. So it really is about not approving, disproving, but rather using design to make us be more aware of our responsibilities. You know, there's so much that talk about water these days. I'm feeling so bad for California. The first place I lived in the United States is Los Angeles, and the drought there is really, really dramatic. A few years ago, at Beijing Design Week, one of the restaurants had the menu that carried the water footprint, carbon and water footprint for any item on the menu. You might think, oh my God, do we need that? Well, you know what? These things become habits, and they become habits that help us through life. So we might want to do that. And anyway, it's nice that designers think of that first. And I was telling you about radical crafts beforehand. I really love the work of Forma Fantasma, for instance. You might not think that it's radical and political at all, but teaching people to mix their own resins from the 18th or 17th century using honey, beeswax, and straw is a kind of very subtle and gentle political act. It's about saying, you know what? There are alternatives. We can dig back into our past to really understand them. That's why right now at MoMA we have this work shown next to the most advanced 3D printing. And it's nice to think about crafts being radical too. Sometimes vision and communication and the attempt to really be political is very overt. This is the work by Ai Hasegawa that's been thinking of the possibility for women to gestate not human babies, but rather endangered species. So the work is called I Wanna Have a Dolphin, okay? Very sensitive. I'm working right now on a salon at MoMA about death and about mortality. Thankfully, we've started talking about it much more lately. Thankfully, books like Atul Gawande's Being Mortal, also the ones that came before, and design too have started the conversation. This is work by students from the Eindhoven Academy of Art and Design from 2006. There was this fantastic exhibition at the Salone del Mobile in Milan that was all about death in a wonderful palace, you know, and it was still Lee Edelcourt at that time. So we can talk once again about old ritual and contemporary life, and we can think about also really difficult issues. This is also work that you see on the foreground by a student of the Eindhoven Academy. In the Netherlands, a fetus is not considered a human that has to be buried until 24 weeks. And it's very difficult for parents sometimes, or for mothers, for parents, or because sometimes you need to have closure and a ritual. So this student made all these little biodegradable coffins. It's really heart-wrenching, but also very sensitive, once again, to think of issues that might not be taken into account before. Sensitive, though, with sensibility. And I'm going to close with some examples of design from so-called developing countries. I say so-called, and I talk about it because I consider that kind of terminology so arrogant. There's so much that we can learn right now from countries that use every part of the cow, and I consider also Italy to be part of that. This is Guatemala, and it's a company called Maya Pedal that recycles old machinery, especially bicycles, to make agricultural and domestic appliances that are human-powered. And how much can we learn from that? It's quite amazing and it's beautiful. Or this is, well, it's parts of Israel. It's some Palestinian students at the Bezalel Academy that designed this beautiful table for schools that is defense against earthquakes. It's basically a table that can sustain about a ton without crushing the people under it. So once again, we go back to true problem solving and thinking in a very, very, very practical way. And I also like this very much. You know that one of the biggest problems with agriculture is that land is exploited, having the same kind of cultivation year after year until it's completely depleted, and there's no attention to the most ancient wisdom of putting certain types of cultivation next to each other because they complement what they need in terms of chemicals and minerals. And this architect and agricultural expert has designed a program to 3D print fields so as to put in proximity cultivations that might benefit from that proximity. It's a little crazy, but it's also very pragmatic, and pragmatism is what defines still some design. I really love Boston Dynamics, even though it's a very kind of double-edged company because it works a lot for the defense and for DARPA, but hey, you know, I was at a conference a few weeks ago where DARPA was mentioned so many times as having benefited the world, and it was not a propaganda conference, so it's always double-edged. But I love this Boston Dynamics robot that is supposed to support troops on the ground, and it is, in the end, after a lot of study, it's shaped like a beast of burden. It's really great. It's shaped like an ox. And that's how what you get to after so much study, you get back to nature in a way. Pragmatism sometimes is also about adaptation. You see here the work, well, it's not work, you see here the protests in Taksim Square in Turkey 2 years ago, where so many detergent bottles were used to be filled with milk against tear gas. It's a form of kind of smart design and recycling. And last but not least is the work of Elemental, a group of architects in Chile that provide startup middle-class beings, people that are able to just put together enough money to buy their own first plot of land with this 3D canvas of a house that can be then augmented with balconies, extra floors, lodges, entrances, and that is already arranged around a cul-de-sac in order to have the startup also the community. So this kind of selflessness, this kind of ambiguity, this kind of generosity and altruism, and also this kind of like double-edged ambivalence about what's good and what's bad is what characterizes so much of design today. And that's what I want to celebrate and what I want to explain to the world as much as possible, because by knowing more about design, also citizens can be empowered to demand more of it. And you know, if we all together will have to burn 1 or more 2 chairs for people to understand that design is not only about chairs, so be it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paola. That was really inspirational. It kind of focuses us again on design and the impact we make in our communities, and to remind us all that this is Design Week in New York, and to continue to participate in a load of events that are happening here in our great community. Suzette and I both want to say thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you to all our partners, and we'll see you again next spring.
Yeah.